Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to stay slightly further away from the microphone. I feel like I was a little in your face last week. Uh, Welcome to week 2 of College Comp. We're chugging along. I have to record this a little sooner than maybe I'd prefer, so if the screen that I'm talking into looks a little different from the screen that you actually read for week 2, sorry. I do have other work obligations, let's say, that keep me busier at certain times of the week. So this is my time to record this screencast. And as always, if you have any questions about anything you hear or see, please contact me. Many of you already know, and some of you are already learning that I'm a fairly quick responder to emails. So that's a fine way to keep in touch and to get feedback. But don't forget, I'm on Kick. I'm getting a lot of people that are, I don't even know what you say. Do you say kicking? I'm not cool enough to know that. That people are reaching me through the app Kick, and that's awesome. That's fine. That makes me even more available. So please keep in touch. If anything is confusing to you, if you want to hear something in sort of other language, you want to use other words or describe what I'm expecting in a different way, no problem. Couldn't be happier to do so. Okay, let's jump in here. Get through this week's materials early, okay? Hopefully some of you are already sneaking ahead and looking at this, but even if you're reading this on Monday, it's time to get through all these materials because you have not a lot in terms of producing work this week, but you do have a lot to do in terms of collecting data and preparing work to be presented. Next week is a very busy one with peer review, so I want you to not have the observation take up too much of your time. I'd rather you be working through the observation, making sense of it, than just conducting it. So by Wednesday, the 27th, let me see, I got this tab open somewhere. I have 55 tabs open. Brainstorming, essay 1. I can even click you over here, lessons, and then brainstorming 1. So look, we've already got a couple of posts and replies. Shout out Erica, shout out Noah. No surprise to see those names on there. So you got some questions. Just I want to know what you're getting into in terms of your observation. I want to also make sure you're planning it well. So who or what do you tend to observe? When do you plan to make the observation? I'm really interested in this question. How do you intend to record what you observe? I'll have more to say on that in a moment. And what questions do you have heading into your observation? So if you give me sort of wishy-washy, boilerplatey sort of answers, I'm going to record everything I see, you're not really going to be prepared to conduct a good observation. And the essay that you write is completely dependent on the quality of the data that you record. So please think hard about what am I trying to say here? Have a solid game plan in place. Bring lots of different options, especially if you've never conducted an observation before. You really don't know what's working for you or what will work for you. So, be prepared to do a few observations. Everybody gets better as they do them. The more observations you do, and just like anything really, the more you do it, the better at it you get. So if something works a little better, than something else, then the next time you make an observation, just do the thing that worked. Okay, it's not rocket science, I don't suppose. So by Wednesday, you got to post to the discussion board, and then by Thursday, you have to respond to 2 of your peers. Am I a fan of post and respond, post and respond? No, I'm not, but this is built into how I have to grade certain aspects of this class. So here we are using Angel. My apologies for making you use Angel at all, to be honest, but I hope you'll notice that it's not that much. Okay, so then the rest of the weekend, really soon, I hope, you'll watch this long-ish video. As I said in a comment there, I was going to make this, I was going to make a video of my own, but my man Graham here is, he's on point. He knows what he's talking about. So he's got a whole channel. If you want to get into research methods into social sciences, dude knows his stuff. He is quite intelligent. So feel free to watch even more videos on him, but that'll give you a lot of material to consider. A lot of fodder, I guess the word I'm trying not to use, but I used anyway, was fodder for your observation. The sort of the disruptive nature of observing anything. Once you look at something, it changes, and so do you. That's participant observer observation 101. You think about those of you that drive. If you're you're a very different driver when you see a cop on 77, aren't you? Or 21 or wherever. I'm one of those dummies that turns the radio down, both hands on the wheel. The act of being observed naturally changes us. So if you notice people being a little more subconscious as you're taking notes about them, well, that's not completely a surprise. And the video does a better job than I'm doing with explaining these deeper ideas. But I guess, embrace your role as an observer. If you go into an observation understanding that, just by nature of being an observer, you're altering the thing that you're observing, well, then good, because there's, at least I subscribe to the school of thought that says there's nothing you can do about it. There are trains of thought in sociology that say that you can do something about it, and it becomes a bit more, what's the word? Like epistemological. There's a nice big word for you. I don't go that far down the rabbit hole with sociology, with I guess it's also called qualitative research or naturalistic inquiry. You're trying to observe something sort of in its natural habitat. Just because I don't doesn't mean you can't. You can kind of talk me into that, to sort of going into an observation with an agenda. I was just taught that you go in with no expectations, be willing to learn the things that your observation teaches you. And on that note, we can move on here to number 2, the materials that I've created to help you prepare for your observation. Quick one about field notes. And again, this is a function or a product of my graduate studies. My doctoral program was very heavy on social sciences and qualitative research. And so as a result, I tend to believe that stuff because it's the stuff I was taught. It's what everybody does. You kind of, you get instruction in something, and you learn to sort of trust that instruction. I had great professors in my doctoral studies. And so this is more or less what they taught me. So hopefully this is clear. You cannot work from memory. You have an invention journal that's also going to reinforce that. But take field notes. So, I mean, I can tell you about the days back when, the internet was steam powered, where everyone had to take handwritten notes. You took your notebook and you took your pen and your pencil with you, and you had more or less kind of 2 options. You had this one here, free form narrative in nature, which is like you start writing at the beginning and just writing everything you see sort of in order. That requires a little more work once you get those notes home, because you're going to have very scattered sort of notes, and you're going to have to maybe get out different colored highlighters and highlight the different parts that correspond to the different aspects of your observation that you come away with. If you're willing to, I think when you go freeform in nature and narrative sort of in form, it's a little easier up front, and then the hard work starts once you get your notes home, because then they have to make sense. You have to make them make sense, not only to yourself, but then to me, your reader, in the form of an essay. So that's sort of easier to do on site, a little bit more difficult when you get home. Spatial or categorical notes are a little more labor intensive up front. As I say, you have to prepare how you're going to take your notes, and then the good news is, that's sort of the bad news. The good news is when you get home, you already have everything sort of spatially located. You have different categories already that correspond to the different things that you see. It also sort of gears you towards what to look for. And then again, you don't have to do 2 observations, but there's this idea, it's called the constant comparative method. Let me pop open a tab here. Constant compare. Yeah, all right, so second results. Right here, the constant comparative method is which any newly collected data is compared with previous data that was collected in one or more earlier studies. That's not a bad way of putting it. So you can see it there. You're constantly comparing as you conduct your field notes. And so, if you go once and you see some interesting stuff, say, between young couples, if you're like saying going to the mall or somewhere out in the world, and you see interesting behavior that maybe the girl in every relationship is always looking at the guy and the guy's always looking at his phone, that's interesting. And then when if let's say you find it interesting, I would, the next time you go to observe the mall or the restaurant or wherever again, you keep an eye out for those couples in particular. You look out for young couples, because the more you observe a behavior, the more sort of frequency with which it pops up, the more reliable your findings become. So this is, it's a 200 level class. So do you have to do 2 observations or 3 or 4? Absolutely not. You can get away with writing a decent paper with 1 observation, but I can guarantee that your findings are going to be richer and more valid if you conduct multiple observations, which is why I kind of got on you last week to get started early. So where are we at here? Okay, handwritten notes. So those are your 2 options for handwritten notes, and that's where I come from sort of experientially a little bit more. But we have all this digital technology around us, as you're learning in this class, of course, and as you just know, as a result of being an American in the world, we have all these devices that can help us with just about everything. So I'm always curious to see how students succeed or don't using digital technology. So if you want to bring your tablet or your laptop and sit, of course you're going to be a little more conspicuous than maybe someone sitting on, sitting with a notebook. But I guess that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can also record, right? You can take photos as long as they're not intrusive, or I think when the line's being crossed, of course, or at least use your own moral compass and let that moral compass be strong for when you do record. But you can take a digital recorder, or you can record voice memos with if you have an iPhone like I do. There's always that option as well, that you can record it and then take it home and kind of try to make sense of it. That's super raw data though, and raw data is pretty difficult to work with, and I don't want that to be the hard part of this assignment. I want the writing to be the hard part. And I do have lots of students who actually take drawings of the layouts of the places that they are, especially like restaurants. If you see like high traffic areas, there's something to be said for maybe thinking about a top-down, sort of, blueprint of the place that you're observing. What else can I tell you here that I don't just have to read? Write down everything. I mean, just from my own experiences conducting social research, the stuff that doesn't seem important when you're there can so often become massively important once you get it home. So write down everything, even silly stuff. And that's also one of the more fun things when I read your invention journals, is to see what silly stuff you do choose to write down. Initial impressions are also very telling. So write down your impressions as well. So if you put a plus or a minus next to something you think is a positive interaction or a negative, lots of people do interesting things with color coding. Go right ahead. So here's a list of questions that you can read on your own time, but I think are good springboards for deeper inquiry, let's say. So, what kind of text do you notice? Tech in use, and what surprised you? I like that question. It doesn't really come from me. It comes from a professor I had years ago. But what surprised you? My favorite of all the descriptive observation tips are by my boys here, Spradley and Robson. Spradley obviously came along and Adian came up with it, and then Robson sort of refined it a little more. So you got space, actors, activities, objects, acts, events, time, goals, and feelings. If you have just like categories or columns for each of these, and you write down notes that you see that come to bear on one of those, cool. If you take your free-form narrative data home, if you do this one, and you just set up sort of areas on a sheet of paper, or even like on your floor, and you write down each interaction and you have them correspond to one of these 9 dimensions. Good stuff. Very good stuff. You'll get better at this the more you do it. I don't expect you to be perfect at it at first, of course. So as usual, I'm going to have to rush through a little bit here. There's Lincoln and Guba. Those are the other sort of pioneers of naturalistic inquiry. They wrote the darn book. Plan your observation. Visualize your observation. Try to stay out of the way. Okay, again, this is somewhat optional, ignoring your bias. You want to go in with preconceived notions. I'm listening. I'm aware that strategy can work. I don't find it to be a successful one very often. Record as much as you can. Keep your ears open. So see and hear as much as you can. You got your running notes. You got your field logs. You got your chronologues. Context maps are kind of fun. Taxonomic notes are what I was just talking about. And then sociometrics, or if you want to really deep dive and deal with what are called critical incidents, if you want to really slow down and describe an interaction between, a customer and an employee, something like that, and how technology comes to bear on it. People checking their phone or on their phones when they're trying to pay bills, that sort of thing. Write it all down. Keep track of your impressions. And then when you start writing, I guess I'm going to save a lot of my tips for essay 1 for next week, but you begin at the beginning. You have to have an argument with readers. So you have to take what you learn and use it to scaffold or buttress an argument, okay? Not just the story of your observation. This is the time of the week where I tell you I don't want the story of your observation. I want you to arrive at an argument that you invite me to share, okay? Invention Journal 2, I feel like kind of speaks for itself. It is also due by Monday. And after this first one, I feel like the first Invention Journal really speaks for itself and doesn't need help. But every other one is going to have an example, so you can see. Okay, here's a longer example of field notes. Hopefully you'll consult these. I don't really think I have time to click through all of them. This is a really good note-taking process from a student last year. Again, lots of ways to present your Invention Journal 2 findings and ways to be interesting with them. I'll be really sort of wobbly with what constitutes 4 pages. If you just take 4 pictures of your notes, that's okay. I would like to see you work a little more with them, but I guess your real work will just come later. You're just putting off the work that has to get done eventually. So read your textbook. These are very important, especially exploring in the field, chapter 22. And that's it. Send me your questions. Good luck this week.